Hey guys, it's Pastor Yummy with Life 360 Weston, and today is October 27th, 2025, and it's Monday. We are ready to dive into John chapter 11. So, go ahead, grab those Bibles, maybe a second cup of coffee. Yes, you see my little tea bag. It's dandelion root, my favorite. So, I hope you're ready to get going. We're going to just dive right into this today. Get out all of my throat clearing and let's go. Dear Lord. Okay, better get on the right page there. Okay, dear Lord, I pray that you open our eyes to these treasures, these truths found in your word that have the power to transform our very hearts and souls and lives. Thank you, Jesus. So here we are in John chapter 11. It starts like this. Now, a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So, the sisters, what did they do? They sent word to Jesus. Lord, they said, the one you love is sick. So Jesus just loved this family, Lazarus and his two sisters. So let's see, let's get some context here. So Jesus was about, I think he was like a day out from them. Would have probably taken him like a day to get there. And by all accounts that we can find in other literature, that Jesus, that by the time the messenger got to Jesus, Lazarus was already dead. So and Jesus was still a day away. So, now this town, Bethany, I think that was like a couple hours from Jerusalem, a place where, they were wanted to kill Jesus. And so this was all getting a little tricky. Now, what happened here? Oh, okay. Then I think it's interesting that John tells us this is the same Mary who poured the perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. But in his gospel, this doesn't even happen until later on, further into the gospel. So he's just giving us this little window since he already knows these things. And we don't know, if the Gospels, if they're in total chronological order. They're somewhat, and some are more in chronological order. But this is interesting that he mentions that, and in his actual Gospel, it doesn't happen until further along. So keep that in mind. So, verse 4. When he heard this, Jesus said, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was about 2 more days. So, that does sound a little funny, doesn't it, to you? When he heard that they were sick, this family, if it's like you hearing your best friend was sick and you're saying, oh, okay, so I'm going to stay here a few more days. So to us, reading it, and I'm sure to the disciples and especially to Mary and Martha, it's like almost very confusing and rude and just, they're thinking okay, this is just, not Jesus, because of course Jesus would do what's best for them. So what happens? Okay, so that is a little strange that it's written that way. But I think we're going to see why it is written this way. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, so when he heard, he stayed where he was 2 more days. 2 more days, and then it took another day to get there because he was a day away. And then he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." Okay, and they're thinking, they had come from Judea. They were about to stone him, and Bethany's pretty close to Jerusalem. So, But Rabbi, they said, a short while ago the Jews there tried to stone you, and yet you are going back? Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by this world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light." What is he telling them? Are they gonna you think that maybe they want to go by night if they're really talking about a physical journey, but maybe Jesus wasn't talking about a physical journey. Maybe he was talking about something spiritual, in that anyone who walks in the light, in the daylight, meaning in the light of the Lord and in his truths, are not going to stumble. But people that are not walking in the truth of the word, they're going to stumble. And so, I really think he's talking here about faith, about that faith is walking in the light. It may not make sense, to everybody else, but faith ultimately does make sense. And it takes faith to walk in the light. So I think that may be what Jesus had meant here. So verse 11, after he said this, he went on to tell them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going to go there to wake him up." Okay? His disciples replied, still thinking in the natural, of course. Excuse me, another little sip here. Okay, so the disciples, told him, "Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better." But Jesus had not been speaking of his death. No, I'm sorry. Okay, I am losing my place, guys. Jesus had not been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then he told them, verse 14, then he told them plainly, "Look, guys, Lazarus is dead. Dead. And for your sake, I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe." But, excuse me, I'm coughing into my shirt, so, you won't catch it on the video, through the video, right? Those germs. Okay. Here we go. Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better. Jesus, wasn't talking about his just sleeping, really, because he told them Lazarus is dead, but let us go to him. He's going to go there and wake him up. Okay, so then Thomas, also known as Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, "Let us also go that we may die with him." Okay, that's a little weird. Now, doing some digging, what I found about that is it sounded to be like a good possibility. And that is that actually Thomas, known as Doubting Thomas in other Gospels, that he sometimes was referred to as the twin, because like the twin of Jesus, because he was the disciple who looked the most like Jesus. So this is what one commentary suggested, that because he looked so much like Jesus, when he said, okay, let us also go that we may die with him. Meaning that if Jesus goes there, maybe they'll stone Jesus, because, and then who would they stone first? Probably Thomas, because it's not like Jesus had an Instagram, Facebook account. Some people did not know what he looked like. So when he was traveling around, they could easily have confused Thomas with Jesus, and maybe, or stone the lot of them, maybe stone all of the disciples. So when he's saying, let us go that we may die with, like, be dead like Lazarus. So that, I don't know. That made the most sense of what I read. Okay, 17. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Wow, so why is that important, 4 days? Well, I also read that there was sort of a Jewish superstition going around at that time, that when someone died, their spirit would just sort of hover around for 3 days, and they would hope that the person, maybe after anywhere during that time, those 3 days, the spirit would find its way back, and the person could, come back alive. So that's interesting that Jesus waited 4 days, because if he came back like in 2 days, or even on the 3rd day, that was sort of within their superstition, within their Jewish superstition. And the medical people back there then, they, I guess, didn't have the technology, that we do. So maybe they were just not able to tell. Maybe they thought somebody was dead and they were just in a coma, and they thought they had a chance of waking up, and they didn't, know how to understand like we do, because we're really medically advanced. But I won't go down that path. I'm sorry. I'm being a little funny now. But so that was a possibility, that he waited 4 days to really make sure that everybody around that would hear of this miracle would think, okay, it's after the 3-day period. This has never happened before. And so really they would grasp that it was definitely a miracle, and not just one of these things like that they thought could happen. So let's see. So now we learn here that Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day, because that's all they've heard of. So that's what she thought Jesus was talking about. But Jesus said to her, one of these I am statements, so get ready. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she said, I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. So, wow, what a statement. Now we're talking about the I am statements. So there were 7, and I have to go back and look and see exactly what number we're on. But this is, yeah, one of the big ones. I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even though they die. So he's talking about, yes, her brother, she's like, okay, he's going to die in the he's going to be raised up in the resurrection in the last days. But Jesus is there and tells her, I am the resurrection. So, just gives me chills. Can you imagine? So, verse 28, after she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and is asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now, Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. Verse 31. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. So they were, doing their duty, and they're like, okay, she's like running out the door. We're going to run after her because, she just really needs to go to the tomb and mourn. So excuse me, that's what they did. Verse 32, when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. So both Martha and Mary, they were very certain if Jesus was there, Lazarus would not have died. But now when Jesus saw her weeping, and she was just the grief, when you see somebody you love just totally sad and crying and just grieving to this extent. When Jesus saw her weeping, the Jews who had come along with her were also weeping. He was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. And then verse 35, the ones kids love to memorize when they're asked for a memory verse. Jesus wept. The shortest verse in the Bible, but a powerful one. He was so moved, and he was, we know he was 100% God. He was also 100% human. He is our Savior, and he is the one who can relate to us in every way. And he saw this grieving, and he wept. He wept himself. He cried. Verse 36. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. The Jews that were watching, they saw this, and they're like, wow, he really did love him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? They're like, what? Why? Jesus should have been here. He could have kept him from dying, they thought. Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. And Jesus said, take away the stone. And I'm telling you, you don't even understand how surprised these people were. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there's a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days. It's been 4 days. The body is... it's just not going to be good, Lord. Please, just don't do that, because it's like she's given up hope, because it's not 3 days, it's not 2, it is 4 days, and I'm sure they understood, they did not embalm people like we do today, and so it was going to be pretty bad if he moved the stone away from the tomb. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they did what he said. They took the stone away. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out! What happened? The dead man came out. His hands and his feet were wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth even. The cloth was, around his face. That's what they did to the bodies of the dead. Then Jesus said to them, take off those grave clothes and let him go. Verse 45. Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. But some of them, so many believed. I mean, you may be thinking, how can anyone not believe? Okay, let's grab another quick sip. You may be thinking, how could this happen? How could people see the miracle of all miracles and think that it was anything but a miracle? There it says many believe, but what happened? What did the other ones do? But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. I mean, it's like they're tattling on Jesus. It's like, okay, we're going to go tell the Pharisees. It's like some believed and they believed in Jesus, And then others were like, we're going to go tell the Pharisees, because they just knew they had something else to say about this. So it's like, sometimes we think that, if only my loved one or if only this person could only just see a miracle, then they would just come to the Lord. They would give their heart to the Lord. But that's not always the case. It wasn't the case with this most amazing miracle, raising someone from the dead. And that just doesn't always happen. That we see miracles, different types. I mean, maybe people are not raised from the dead, of course, every day, but there's many things of, that are even considered miracles people see today still and yet do not believe. So, yes, let's go on here. Where was I? Okay, yes. So, many believed, but, verse 46, some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. 47, then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. We're like, we need the big guns. We're going to call in the Sanhedrin. That's the, really top of the top, chain. And we gotta talk. I mean, now this man Jesus is raising someone from the dead after 4 days. It's just too much for them. So, what are we accomplishing? They said. Here is this man performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him. And then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation. So they're thinking, this isn't going to look good. They're going to crown him king. Then the Romans are going to come in and they're going to just demolish our nation. But, the funny thing about it is that the Romans did come in. The very thing they were scared of happening did happen about 40 years later, because in 70 AD, the Romans did come in and tear the temple apart. They just tore the temple apart, and just the Jews were scattered. So the very thing they were, trying to like blame on Jesus, it was really, their own doing that brought this Roman takeover. Because before then they had, the Romans, they let them exist and they let them have their own like religious sect, but the Romans still had the governmental authority. But they were always on this sort of delicate type of a relationship, shall we say, with the Roman government. So anyway, so they were just trying to say this stuff about Jesus. Now, then one of them named Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, spoke up, said, you know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish. Interesting. So, in some ways, he was prophesying about Jesus' death. That one man die. So, let's go on to 51. He did not say this on his own, but as high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the Jewish nation. Even if the Pharisees didn't get it, this is what was going to happen. Verse 52, and not only for that nation, but also for the scattered children of God, to bring them together and make them one. So that's interesting. They're saying not only for that nation, but for the scattered children of God, to bring them together to make them one. I mean, Jesus had said, in other books, even from Paul, we see that Jesus was gathering people together. He has one body. He is the shepherd, and he has one body. So let me see here. So from that day on, they plotted to take his life. That was verse 53. From that day on, they were like, this has just gone way too far. We've got to do something. So let's go on to verse 54. Therefore, Jesus no longer moved about publicly among the people of Judea. Instead, he withdrew to a region near the wilderness, to a village called Ephraim, where he stayed with his disciples. 55. When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, many went up from the country to Jerusalem for their ceremonial cleansing before the Passover. They kept looking for Jesus, and as they stood in the temple courts, they asked one another, "What do you think? Isn't he coming to the festival at all?" But the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that anyone who found out where Jesus was should report it so they might arrest him. And that's how chapter 11 ends. So what did you guys think of this chapter? Of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. Let me go back to the beginning of this. Something I just came to my mind. Okay. Yeah, like in verse 4 when he's saying this sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. I think this whole thing, I guess, with Lazarus, it just reminds me of, God's timing, that it was just best this way, that looks like it would be really bad, that Jesus wasn't there. He didn't come soon enough while Lazarus was sick and had not died. He came after the fact. And, but what happened? It was the same result. It wasn't the same result. It was an even better thing that Jesus came when we thought it was too late. So, I guess that this whole story, just to me, is a lesson in God's timing, and that God's timing is always best. And this is just what was planned, that Lazarus was actually going to physically, his body was going to be physically dead, and Jesus was going to raise him up from the dead, you know. So, and then when Martha, I think it was Martha, right, was talking to Jesus and saying that, yes, you know, your brother will rise again. And she's saying, yes, Lord, I know he's going to rise again at the resurrection. But then Jesus turns around to her and says, I am the resurrection. I mean, can you imagine that? Jesus turning around and saying, I am the resurrection. And wow, that's just gives me chills. I mean, that I am statement is just so powerful. I am the resurrection and what? And the life. And just showing us so vividly through this person who was physically dead, saying, I am the resurrection and the life. So, then going on to say, the one who believes in me will live, even though they die. So even though we may die physically, we will live if we believe in Jesus, the resurrection and the life. So, guys, I better end it there. It is getting late here. So, I hope you guys are having a great day, and I look forward to being back with you tomorrow. Now, if you want to leave a comment, let me know what you thought about this chapter. You know, what did you get out of this chapter? What did something really stand out to you in this text? So, let me know, and we will be back with you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day.